So it's day 21 of the farmers' protests. The farmers have hardened their stance. They want the centre to repeal all three laws. The government is open to dialogue, but what shape will that dialogue take? Smriti Irani joins us. She'll talk to us about that in greater detail. But before that, the Supreme Court also directed the government to talk to the farmers with an open mind, saying whatever's happening so far doesn't seem to be getting results, and this cannot happen nationwide. If ignored, the protest could spread nationwide. That's our top story tonight.
It's been 3 weeks since they reached the borders of Delhi. The farmers protesting the new farm laws in the agriculture sector on Wednesday formally replied to the Narendra Modi government's proposal to dilute the reforms. They have rejected the terms of the truce, claiming the government has nothing new to offer.
आंदोलन कंटिन्यू रहेगा जब तक हमारी शर्तें नहीं मानी जाएगी हम कंटिन्यू करते रहेंगे.
The protesters also claimed the government is trying to discredit their protests. They've urged the centre to stop parallel talks with unions. The angry reaction comes after a faction of the Bharatiya Kisan Union called off protests following a meeting with Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar.
आंदोलन वापस लेना चाहते हैं. असल में वो किसान यूनियन है ही नहीं है, किसान है ही नहीं है. वो इनके आपके बंदे हैं, सरकार के बंदे हैं. सरकार के इन्होंने अपने आदमी खड़े करके तो आंदोलन को कमजोर करना, आंदोलन को सट मारनी चाहते हैं. जय जवान.
Meanwhile, the Modi government is wooing farmers by holding Kisan Sammelans with small groups. Minister Tomar, addressing such a Sammelan in Gwalior, claimed that left-wing outfits are misusing farmers.
वहां पर वामपंथी लोग मिलकर इस आंदोलन को दुरुपयोग करके किसानों के कंधे पर बंदूक रखकर चलाना चाहते हैं. देश का एक क्षेत्र पंजाब का सूबा जहां कुछ लोगों ने किसानों के भीतर गलतफहमियां क्रिएट कर दी हैं.
The government has approved 3,500 crore rupees in export subsidies to sugar mills. The government says this, in addition to an earlier amount of 5,361 crore rupees that was cleared, will go to sugarcane farmers.
लेकिन किसान के लिए खुशखबरी वो है कि जो प्रत्यक्ष निर्यात होगा, वो निर्यात का जो मूल्य मिलेगा वो भी किसान के खाते में जाएगा और ये सब्सिडी किसानों को राहत देगी.
Bureau Report, India Today.
So the farmers have hardened their stance. They say all three laws need to be repealed. The Supreme Court says that the government needs to reach out because so far whatever the government is doing doesn't appear to be working, and the apprehension is that the protests could become nationwide. So what is it that the government intends to do now? Joining me on the broadcast is Union Minister Smriti Irani. Smriti Irani, welcome on India First. The farmers, ma'am, have hardened their stance, as you know. They want all the laws repealed. What will the government do next?
If you put India first, then you put first the interest of crores of farmers across the country who have supported these legislations. And Gaurav, when I speak about the support that the farmers have given to the legislation, it is evident by two examples that I'd like to share with you tonight. One, when the bills were passed, the Congress party and some members of the opposition said that MSP operations in the country will cease. It is then, and including the floor of the House, that the Honorable Prime Minister and the Agriculture Minister reiterated the government's promise that MSP operations will continue as they were before. And to certify this came across close to 41 lakh farmers in the procurement of paddy. And it is essential to highlight here that over 52% to between 52% to around 55% of these farmers belong to the state of Punjab. They participated in the MSP operations post the passage of all these bills. That in itself is an affirmation that at least these 41 lakh farmers who received close to 71,000 crore rupees under the MSP operations can testify to the fact that Modi kept his promise not only of continuing with the MSP operations, but the very fact that these 41 lakh farmers came to mandis, including those in Punjab, also again is a testimony to the fact that they came out after the passage of the bill if there was some kind of a struggle that those 40 lakh or 41 lakh farmers had, they wouldn't have joined the government's cause and partook in the MSP operations. The second issue, Gaurav, is that close to 14 crore farmers in the country have received over 93,000 crore rupees under the PM Kisan Samman Yojana. Allow me. And again, these 14 crore farmers again are a testimony to the fact that they believed in the leadership abilities and the reform agenda of Narendra Modi. And that is why today you have a clarion call given by the opposition for a Bharat Bandh, which fails miserably because the people of the country, including the farmers across the country, have come out resoundingly in support of these reforms. I must also here highlight that while you focus on
Yet
those
by some accounts,
who want to
ma'am,
stall
you have close
activities,
to...
there are many farmer organizations who have come up and supported these very bills in the presence of the Agriculture Minister and made those declarations to the media as well. So are you saying that 41 lakh farmers who partook in the MSP operations after the passage of the bills are not to be looked at in terms of their support for Narendra Modi's reformed agenda? Are you saying that those farm organizations that are coming forth to support the bill are not to be valued? And only those who will possibly hold up the poster of
Yet you have about 60,000 by some accounts to a lakh on Delhi's borders. Ma'am, yet so many are on the streets. Why are they still on the streets? Why has the government failed to convince them? And the Supreme Court too is apprehensive that this protest could become nationwide unless something is done about this.
Given my constitutional position, I would not like to comment on a sub judice matter in front of the Honorable Supreme Court. Insofar as those who are protesting at the border, I think, Gaurav, you need to recall that when the bills were passed, it is the Punjab government that actually gave an administrative order to ensure that an agitation is instigated against the government of India. Secondly, it is the Aam Aadmi Party and the party workers of the Aam Aadmi Party, along with the Chief Minister of Delhi, who stepped up to play Punjab politics at the cost of the citizens of Delhi, thereby doing chakka jams at the roads in Delhi, shutting down 1,800 factories plus by the Chief Minister of Delhi, who represents the Aam Aadmi Party. Surely you don't blame me for the activities of Arvind Kejriwal. So you have two political leaders who have instigated, constructed an agitation because they lost the mandate of the people, one at the Lok Sabha, and two, they could not garner the votes to stall a piece of legislation. And let me here highlight, Gaurav, that those who accuse this being a hurried piece of legislation need to recognize that conversations around agricultural reforms began in the year 2001, which means that these reforms have been in discussions actively by governments after governments, by state governments, academics, by those who are instrumental in bringing about farm technology into our country, and by Kisan organizations as well, for 19 years. It's a 19 years of dialogue that culminated into legislation, which again was deliberated on both houses of parliament and passed, and then they were notified, including by governments such as the Aam Aadmi Party government in Delhi. Now, you're experienced enough to know that when a state government
but what we see on ground
act of parliament,
yet, are you saying that it's pure politics?
And politically, when it administratively and politically gives assent and support to that piece of legislation. So this question is to be put forth to Arvind Kejriwal as to why did he notify the farm bill if he did not believe it in it so. And now the duplicitous role that he plays by doing some political stunt or the other in the garb of an unchan for farmer organizations who are using it for political expediency in terms of the fruits that they hope to bear in the state of Punjab. That is a question you should pose to Arvind Kejriwal and to Amrinder Singh.
Ma'am, you know, the thousands of farmers who are braving 4 degrees and 5 degrees Celsius temperature, lives have been lost. Ma'am, are they political workers? Because they say we are neither Tukde gang, we are not Khalistanis. That's the allegation that's being made and that hurts us.
I will not cast aspersions. I will not cast aspersions on the Indian farmer. I have brought to light the polity that is being involved. I have brought to light, as you call it, the Tukde gang. I will again now on this platform raise one issue, Gaurav. While I'm not casting aspersions on any Indian farmer, including those at the border, I must ask this as an Indian citizen, let alone a minister. There were clarion calls given for the assassination of Prime Minister Modi. Not one word of condemnation by either Arvind Kejriwal or Captain Amrendra Singh. Is today politics to such a low depth now fallen that you have chief ministers partaking in an activity which calls for the assassination of the Indian Prime Minister? That was a conscious choice. It was a conscious choice of people in the Andolan to ask for the assassination of Narendra Modi. I'm asking you in a democratic process, is that a fair way to indulge in deliberation or debate?
Fair enough. So what next? How will the government reach out to these protesters? Because these protesters also say that the government's attempt is to reach out to a section of farmers, get them to come on board and try and split the movement, divide the movement, and that is something that they find unacceptable. I had one Kisan leader on my show yesterday who said if the government pushes the farmers beyond the edge, there could be a response, ma'am.
I will not respond to threats given on your channel to the Government of India, and mind you, the Government of India is the constitutional representation of the political will of the people of India. I will not respond to that threat, but I will say this: across channels there have been many such organizations and their representatives. On one occasion before the Bharat Bandh call, they said, "हमको बंद नहीं करना है, विपक्षी दलों ने इसका ऐलान किया है." That is a statement on record which nobody can retrieve. There have been certain representatives who've gone onto Twitter just a few years ago asking for these very reforms. So I'm not getting into the dichotomy that is being discussed on your platform right now. I can only say this, that your charge that the government is only engaging with the select few is baseless, because the government, which includes representatives who are the Secretary Agriculture, the Minister Agriculture, Minister Commerce, they have been in talks with farmers across the board, irrespective of those who support the legislation or those who don't. But penultimate issue that, Gaurav, that needs to be addressed is this: what are the provisions of the law that are unpalatable? The law predominantly says that a farmer now is free to sell their wares, to sell their crop to anybody in the country at a price that the farmer determines. Should that legal protection not be provided through legislation to farmers across the country? It should. Secondly, the law says that you have to make payments to the farmer within 72 hours.
But the farmer says give me MSP and put it in law so that even the private people will not buy it below MSP.
MSP has been given. MSP has been given. What if a farmer in this country decides to sell his wares, sell his crop at a higher price than the MSP? Can you deny that farmer that tried to freely enter into a contract? Can you deny that farmer that right?
Okay. The Prime Minister says farmers are being misled. That's what the Prime Minister said in Kutch.
3 decades now. Allow me, Gaurav. Allow me. Allow me to just say two things. Allow me to say two things. Contract farming has been undertaken by Congress governments, especially in states like Punjab, for years now, since the late 90s. But never before was there a parliamentary legislative piece which says make payments in 72 hours. And I must here reiterate, as I've done so a few days ago, that when this bill was still in stages of discussion, there was a farmer in the Congress and UPA ruled Maharashtra in Dhule who was running from pillar to post, and this is just one example, trying to get their payments done. Post the passage of the bill, he invoked this very law to get a payment that was owed to him of over 3 lakh rupees. How can you deny farmers across the country that protection of law?
Okay. But the point is, the Prime Minister says farmers are being misled. Rahul Gandhi, Congress Party MP from Wayanad, he a couple of days back tweeted that the Modi government had cheated the farmers, and the farmers this time were not willing to step back. He then went on to say that he stands with the farmers and that they should remain firm with these protests, ma'am.
He doesn't stand with the farmers, Gaurav. He doesn't stand with the farmers. This is a man who takes a sofa and sits on a tractor. For heaven's sake. He has been the Amethi MP. Let me tell you today, as the current MP of Amethi, when Rahul Gandhi was the MP of Amethi, I'm sure he's not done a single farm visit where he could ensure that there is some applicable legislative measure that supports farmers. There is a district headquarters called Gauriganj. When Rahul was in power along with his mother, and there was a appropriate friendly power center in Uttar Pradesh, in Gauriganj, when farmers used to line up for fertilizers, they were lathi charged. That is the reality of Amethi. And when we talk about Rahul Gandhi and his love, this newfound love for farmers, let me tell you as the current MP of Amethi. For the past 6 years, there's been an administrative order given by a judicial body in Amethi. Rahul Gandhi, Mrs. Vadra, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi have usurped the lands of farmers in Amethi. They are squatting on it illegally. And these farmers have run from pillar to post trying to get their own lands released from this family. And you think that this kind of hypocrisy will be acceptable, forget to Amethi, to the rest of the country? This is a man who does not even come out and say that there is no APMC Act functional in the very states from where he is now a Lok Sabha member. This is a man who declared openly delist fruits and vegetables from the APMC list. And this is the man who said that the entire APMC Act is redundant. Can he shy away from those public proclamations? He cannot. And while Rahul Gandhi in the manifesto as president of Congress party insisted that you put in clauses so that the APMC Act is totally demolished, and he calls the Essentials Commodity Act archaic, it is the BJP-led NDA under Narendra Modi which says we do not touch the APMC Act. We are just ensuring that the interstate movement of farmers is in no way disturbed, and the farmer is free to sell their wares anywhere in the country at any price that the farmer may so determine.
Fair enough. Will that be investigated? Will that be taken to its logical conclusion? Is another question perhaps I leave our viewers with. Smriti Irani, as always, many thanks for joining me here on India Today. We will track the farmers' protests and the government's response very closely.
Thank you.